Welcome back, everybody, to Selling the Soundtrack, where we break down the barriers of the music sync industry. Joining me today is Everton.
Stop.
He is goated in the music industry. I'm actually so excited.
Stop.
He founded Racket Music and A-Side Music. He's worked with some of the biggest brands like Apple, Vans, Sephora. You're also huge in the TV and film industry. Yeah, guys, this is Everton.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. This is hype. This is cool.
So share with us a little more about you and your journey in sync.
Yeah, so a good place to start is, I'd like to start from, my childhood, really, when it gets into this music supervision stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was always surrounded by music. My dad's a music aficionado, and he had a huge vinyl collection that I inherited. When in my youth, I was trained on the organ, not the church organ, but my parents put me into organ lessons. And I think that's where the first start and taste of music and creation and production really started.
Mm-hmm.
Then I used to start DJing and, in basement jams and like Brampton and stuff like that.
Cool.
I had a little DJ crew called Diamond Cut Sound Crew.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cute.
So it was like the three of us and this, three childhood friends. And then, it stemmed off where, I finished high school, went to university, and started toying around in, music production and started making hip-hop beats. One notable artist was Shad. I managed to, produce a couple tracks for him on the album that he won a Juno Award for. And then,
Sick.
that's where we really got a taste of things. And then I went to school, believe it or not, for software engineering. My dad was a mechanical engineer, so he was like, you got to be an engineer. That lasted 2 years, and I dropped out. And then I found myself at University of Western Ontario in the Media, Info, and Technoculture program. And
Cool.
that's where, I got real taste for, I had a course about music and film, and I was like, whoa, what's that about?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when it really started to explode, and I really started to do a deep dive into what it takes to get, music into TV and film. Yeah, so then with that, I had a zany idea to, launch my own company called A-Side Music Licensing, and it was a company that was solely dedicated to aggregating and collecting Canadian music for TV and film. And at that time, I was stage managing for Canadian Music Week for about 8 years. So all the bands that I was stage managing, I was
You already had those connections,
I was like, hey,
yeah.
give me your music. I'm starting a company, right?
Yeah.
Started there, and then caught wind of, a good friend of mine, my mentor, David Heyman, who was instrumental in getting me into Vice Canada. And that's where I headed up the music supervision department for about 3.5 years. And then, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the Vice Canada couldn't sustain, and they had to close their doors, and then they laid everybody off, and then here we are today. I launched Racket Music Supervision, and now I have, 3 music supervisors that are working for me, 1 music coordinator, and here we are, just taking on a lot of very cool productions, and in that time when I started Racket, I got the phone call from Apple, where they were like, hey, man, we've been watching your work. And I was like, get out of here. I was like, who is this on the phone?
Yeah, who from Apple?
I thought it was one of my boys playing a joke on me. And I was like, who is this on the phone? I was like, no, it's actually Apple. And so they brought me on, and I'm kind of like the relief pitcher where, if the current music supervision team, they feel inundated with a lot of work, I come on board and I assist each music supervisor with their particular commercials or spots, or sometimes they even give me my own. And I'm kind of like the relief music supervisor to, provide more searches and so on and so forth, and help them, get those productions out on the floor.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. You like to keep yourself busy.
Yeah, I do. A little too busy.
That's cool. So you started off in music. So when you started A-Side, you were starting with your own music and your friends' music.
Yeah, a lot of it was
your own stuff.
A lot of it was all of our own stuff.
Cool.
We learned a lot from that too, because a lot of, I'm from the hip hop, industry and side of things. So a lot of hip hop, they use a lot of samples. And,
That was problematic. Yeah, I'm sure you.
we started to learn. We started to learn after a while that you can't use samples, and you have to clear those too. And they're super expensive to clear a lot of those vintage rare records. Like, you're pulling a Marvin Gaye sample. Have fun with that. Yeah. Right? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of it did start with
your own
friends,
stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you started A-Side, how many artists did you have on your roster once you decided, like, okay, I'm going to make this link now?
Well, it wasn't so many how many artists, it was how many, like, because I was going by, like, how many tracks that we had within the library. And, we got up to about, like, 2,500, 2,600 songs, which is a lot. And then, crazy thing about A-Side as well, too, and it's sort of like it's a crazy story. So I stumbled across this other music supervision company in Colorado. They were folding, and they had a library of music, and they had like 16,000 tracks or something like that. And he was like, "Oh my God, like I'm folding the business, but I want to sub-license this music library." So at that time, we had ingested like another additional 16,000 songs from this guy sub-licensing it from his field music licensing company, and a lot of that was like the core of the A-Side music library, which then kind of broke it out because he was in the U.S. and it wasn't Canadian anymore. So I, had to kind of lose that.
Right.
But
that's just growth, though.
It's
kind
growth.
of inevitable. Like you
yeah.
start niche and it's Canadian and it's awesome and nationalistic, but it's just like that's an
go.
awesome problem, also.
Right. It was cool and it was great that we stumbled on that.
Yes.
But it was. I remember coming across that and I was like,
That's insane.
I was like, this is insane. I was like, are you kidding me? Like,
what a big op.
Right.
Yeah. And was it still hip hop stuff or was it completely
it was
a
a complete like mix of different genres of music. It was absolutely insane. And it was a healthy like music library that he had too.
Yes.
So
that probably made it easier with your outreach too, because it's like now all these new doors are open.
Yeah, like so many. I mean, like, because once the catalog kind of and like I'll be honest, like a lot of the catalog was like hip hop focused, right?
At first, yes.
Because it was I'm just getting started. I didn't really know.
You just do what you're comfortable with.
Exactly. Yeah. But ingesting this music library of just multi genres was. Helpful a
I'm
lot.
sure. That's sick. Yeah. It's so cool to also just hear about the entrepreneur side of the music sync industry too, because like just like as a producer, I get to see it kind of peripherally, but it's cool to see people who start their own companies within the industry.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Even trying to figure out, like, a lot of people don't know what a music supervisor does.
Yeah.
Right?
So many people
just don't. Like, they hear about it, but it's like, really, what do they actually do? So that's where I started from, and I was like, started watching movie credits and TV credits, and I see music supervisor. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool, but what does it really entail? And, a lot of it was, you reach out to like a music supervisor on a TV show. Hey, I'm an aspiring music supervisor. I'd like to get some more information. They don't reply to you. They don't say.
Absolutely not.
Like, no. It's sort of like this like weird like art of like Jedi ways that you have to like kind of figure out yourself.
Yes.
And starting A-Side was was my way in. And not to mention I'm really good at like just generating attention on social media and stuff. So I was doing other things like via Twitter, like doing music reviews and so on and so forth on behalf of A-Side to kind of
stand out
and to kind of make us, not to toot my own horn. I'd like to think that I know music really well now.
Yes.
But, we just kind of positioned ourselves as like sort of like a thought leader in the music industry, in the Canadian music industry. And like we would just talk about music as it would come out and, put our perspectives and our comments on it. And it took off on Twitter and stuff like that.
For sure. I think the secret sauce is providing value.
Right.
So, like, I think the issue is that a lot of musicians come into this thinking, like, my music's so good, I deserve a placement. But, like, where are you providing value? Like, how are you being helpful? So, like, kind of the way you did it was like, I'm going to provide information and help to people. And then that was kind of your stepping stone into everything.
And that's how, a lot of the doors really opened up for us. And, and at the same time, it's just like, you're like, we're tweeting about stuff and we're tweeting the artists and we're putting their tag name in it. And then the artists are kind of like, oh, dude, who are you? What do you do? Like, you're a music supervisor. And then all these connections, just started really branching off. And, it was cool.
So cool.
Yeah. And then also, if I could just might add as well too, just to really getting into the industry. When I started at Vice, didn't have a music supervisor for about 2 years before I got there. So they had all this music that were on productions that weren't even licensed or cleared. Okay.
Wow.
Right. So my job really was to come in and clean up shop, and I shit you not, like I had licenses like around my desk, like paperwork, just like
Oh my
surrounding.
God.
I have pictures of it. I should send it to you. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
I'm just cleaning up all of this mess, but also reaching out to like all these labels and all these artists and musicians and letting them know like, hey, I owe you some money.
Right.
I need you to sign on this license, and then like here's when I'm gonna pay you. And they're like, oh my God, thank you, Everton. So I also
Yes.
kind of like
Helped.
right. I kind of
Yes.
helped everybody, and it kind of allowed me to really get my tentacles into the music industry on every single facet, from label to like musician to music libraries, and just be like, hey, I'm the new guy here. I'm fixing everything, and it totally helped till this day. Like I mean,
Absolutely.
the Rolodex is just it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, people I know.
And if you could go back in time, would you change anything?
No,
Not a single thing.
not a single thing.
Yeah.
No. Because I'm very much so like your path is your path kind of thing, and
Yes.
I've now that I look back on things, no, I wouldn't have changed anything. I'm glad I had to go through this process to become a music supervisor, because I feel that, like back in the day, they never offered music supervision in school. Like now you're just seeing it, right? So like I'm self-taught music supervisor, and a lot of that is, also from my mentor, David Heyman, as well, too. Who
Right.
was also the same.
Mentors are so important.
Oh, man.
They're life changing. I think they're underrated and not talked about enough. But I feel like to become successful at the thing you want to do, it's either you're interning or volunteering,
Yeah.
or like for me being a producer, I feel like the only way I got good was by interning and getting producer mentors,
It's
because
such-
otherwise it's guessing work. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you know where to start?
Yeah, it's such a huge value, and yeah, like working under David Heyman, who is the king of like Canadian music sync. You could say to this day he has that title. It was just incredible, just like working and alongside him. And when I started at Vice, when he got me in there, it's just like, yeah, I knew what my master sync license was. I knew how to go about licensing music, but I really didn't at the same time.
Yeah, of course,
right?
fake it till you make
Fake
it.
till I
Like,
make it.
absolutely.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Like straight up. Like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It was just like, a lot of it was like, for A-side, like not to say it was smoke and mirrors, but like it was. And it's
Yeah.
funny because that's how David Heyman reached out to me. He's like,
Yes.
hey, he's like, are you the owner of A-side? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, so he's like, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, all kinds of shit. He's
Yeah.
like, no, you're not, because he's like, I'm working on it. He's like, get to my office. I want to talk to you. And that's pretty much how we met and how everything started out.
That's cute.
Right. So like, yeah. it's
So,
kind of-
were you wearing a lot of different hats when you first started?
I was wearing every single, yeah.
At Vice.
At Vice, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, so the only music supervisor in an office of about 200 people. You got directors, music editors, producers, you name it. Vice has three main verticals. One, they had Virtue, which was an in-house agency, which did, brands, advertising and whatnot. I managed that. Then you had the actual TV channel that we had for a while until Rogers failed that, whatever. Then you had the actual TV channel. All the TV productions that were on that channel were going through me, all the licenses, everything. And then you had the socials, like the Instagrams.
And that's a whole
and that's
other
a whole
thing.
other thing as well, too.
Yeah.
And then you had that, and then I had to manage all our music libraries that we had blanket licenses for. So for everything from creative to administration to the overall music supervision department, and even making sure everyone's getting paid, like invoicing, accounting.
My God.
Yeah, it was all me.
Wow.
No help whatsoever. I begged for a music coordinator for years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Good opportunity though, like because like that's also you get to learn on someone else's dollar too.
Yeah.
It's just like you're wearing all the hats and it's a lot in the moment, but also like that I'm sure equipped you so much.
That
for
was the
your
best
own-
master class I could have.
Absolute real world
And
experience.
get paid for it.
A
right?
1,000,000%.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was great. Like I wouldn't change. Like I said, I would not change anything for the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have advice for anybody getting into sync for the first time? from a producer musician perspective?
Like to actually get your music into sync?
Into sync, yes.
Oh yeah, just yeah.
Just, yes.
I do a lot of panels on this, on like how to get your
Yes.
music into TV,
Yes.
TV and film. But you know, one of the major things, one of the main things I say rather is just be patient, and also, you know, do your research as to where your music might fit. Right? You got a lot of people that are just like sending music out. Right? It's just like, yeah, dude, like it's great, but I work on, you know, Hallmark Productions, and you're sending me heavy metal.
It's just not a good match.
Right?
Yeah,
It's not a good match, right?
Yeah.
So like, do your research and really hone in on a music supervisor. And not to say that music supervisors are only in one lane, but a lot of us do work on, you know, a certain style of production in a sense, right? So find that music supervisor, look at TV shows that you think that your music could live in and what it resonates with, and then go that lane and attack with like purpose rather than just like
willy-nilly all over
the place and just trying to send everything out.
Yes.
So that's one thing. Second thing is look at sync rep companies, because sync rep companies, like I rely on them heavily. So, you know, if I have to look for an alternate song for a particular spot, let's say I have a Beatles, so the director put in a temp song of the Beatles, and, you know, I need to find songs that are similar.
Yes.
You know, a lot of the times, because I'm working on so many productions, it's too time consuming for me just to go and search that on my own. Like I'll do my, you know, search on my own within my own library that I have on my computer, but sync rep companies are there to assist me. So I'll send them the brief, and they'll send me like tons of tracks that match up with that Beatles recording. So as a musician, these companies are really beneficial, and they really work to get your music out there. So always look at them. Like, you know, you got companies like Bank Robber, Terror Bird, you know, or even if you're looking at music libraries to put your stuff into, like Jingle Punks and stuff like that. It's a good way to get your foot into the door into the music sync realm. You know, and then you have the option to reach out to a music supervisor directly as well too. But but just try to, you know, really hone in on what you want to
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much choose what you're passionate about, and then do your research on who also works in that space.
In that space, yeah.
Yes.
Right, because it means a lot, right? I mean, like, you know, I'm inundated with constant music submissions. And,
Yes.
you know, I could tell when somebody really doesn't know the work that I've done.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody that
Has researched
and been like, hey, I like what you did in this spot of this film at this
Yes.
time code at this whatever. And
Yes,
I'm like,
for
oh
sure.
shit. I was
Like,
"You're
you
watching
really
my shit."
watched, yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So so those things count as well too.
Yes.
And then thirdly, there's etiquette.
Okay,
And you know, when you send, you know, your music out to a music supervisor, a lot of the times we won't get back to you right away because we just don't have a spot for it.
Right.
It doesn't mean you follow up with that music supervisor every single day.
Right. Yes.
Hey, did you
totally.
get it? Did you hear it yet? Did you listen to it? Like,
it's like, that's too much. That's
too
not
much.
I think just a human approach is just the most important thing. Like,
Yeah.
would you really do that to somebody
Right.
in person? Like, probably not.
Probably
That's kind of
not.
embarrassing.
Right. It is,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Okay.
those three things I think are the, you know, top three things for any musician or producer to,
Yes,
you know, try
to pay
do.
attention
Yeah.
to. And do you think a library would be better than a sync rep? Do you like, is there a hierarchy of like what people should strive for?
Not necessarily. You know, it just depends on what you're submitting. You know, I look at music libraries as more, you know, somewhere where you could look for like instrumentals and whatnot. So if you have instrumentals to your music, that's a good place to put it. But for like your real like artistic craft and, you know, actual music and, you know, singer-songwriter stuff, like sync rep companies still get that message across a little bit better to music supervisors, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Music libraries are just what we scroll through to find a spot, really. Like, you know, we have a 30-second spot, we need something quick for $500. You know, so you just got to also kind of just figure out where and what music you want to live in both of those worlds, right?
Right.
Music
right.
library is more generic kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then sync rep companies is like your actual creations and like you as an artist and what you want, you know what I mean?
Right. And to find these libraries and sync reps, you can find them on like IMDb, LinkedIn.
Yeah. You can find them on LinkedIn. IMDb, not so much. You can find music supervisors on IMDb.
Yeah, for like film.
For like film
Yes.
and TV series and stuff. But yeah, you just type in music library in Google
And then they'll just come up.
tons of them. Yeah, we had like 30 of them at Vice, where we had blanket licenses across all of them.
Wow.
Can't even remember half the names, but each one had their, you know, their own kind of like expertise, right? You know?
Yes.
So, yeah, just do the research and
Yes.
find it. And then also just watch out for the deals that
are kind of iffy. Right. Yes.
Right, because like some sync rep companies will want some of your publishing, some don't. Is it exclusive? Is it non-exclusive? There's all that detail and stuff too, right? So there's a lot of research in this game. And,
totally, it's a whole other world of like music business.
Totally.
Yes.
The music supervisor as like a position, as like a role, has been in movies since like forever ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? It's been a thing. It's just like nobody knows about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, even my sister, she is studying film at Toronto Metropolitan.
Cool.
It used to be called Ryerson.
Yeah.
And she's just like, so many of my friends want to be music supervisors and they have no idea where to start.
Like I said, it's sort of like this Jedi.
Yeah, undercover
like industry kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have people that want to be music supervisors, and I've experienced this where I've taken them on, and then I'm like, okay, cool. Like, here you go. I'm like, wait, like, what's this? And we were talking about this earlier. Like, there's two sides to music supervision. There's the fun, creative side. Oh, I get to put songs on TV shows.
Yes.
And then there's the administrative side.
Of course, yes.
And that's the side where I feel you almost have to love more than the creative side of it.
Yeah.
So I get excited when I'm trying to track down or trying to figure out who the copyright holders is for a certain recording, you know, and who owns what percentage and how I go about licensing that and what that looks like, you know, based on rights and terms and so on and so forth. Like that groundwork is a super important part of music supervision that a lot of people just, they see music supervisor and they think that, oh yeah, you're just picking songs and then you're just throwing them into films. No, you have to clear those things.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And there's a lot of legalities and language that are within this master sync license and agreement that you really have to understand.
Yes.
Before you throw yourself into a copyright infringement. Every time we put music into a TV or film, there's so many implications as to copyright infringements if you're not clearing stuff correctly, you know? And you see it from day to day. It's just like, you know, you hear it on the news about certain copyright things with music and so on and so forth. So you got to make sure you dot those I's and cross those T's, man.
It's just safer for people to make original music fully with no samples.
Yeah, exactly.
It sucks though, because I feel like music is such a recycled thing. Like it's meant to be, like, I don't know, I have this whole thing where like I feel like copyright is just wrong just because everything is taken from somewhere. So like when you hear all of these like big scandals of this artist totally ripped off another artist, and it's like, but everybody has ripped off everybody. Yeah. Like, it's insanity. Like, even just, like, you know, that Ed Sheeran scandal?
Yeah, well, that's one of the biggest things that he kind of said during the case. He was just like,
has anybody actually listened to the two songs? Yeah. They're two different songs. It's, like, insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think now with the Ed Sheeran case, I think now what's happening, the legal system is starting to understand just what you just said, right? It's like, it's almost impossible. Like if I'm a music listener and I've been listening to music for 20 years, everything that I've listened to is somehow going to inspire what
absolutely,
I'm creating, right?
Yes.
So, and I think the legal system's starting to get that now.
Yeah.
The first one was that whole Robin Thicke thing.
Yes.
And Marvin Gaye, which by the way, now because of that case, Marvin Gaye recordings are almost impossible to clear.
Of course, nobody wants to put themselves through that.
Right? Even the labels, it's like, are you sure you want to go about this right now? Because like every single case now, because of that case, when you're looking to license a Marvin Gaye song, is a big freaking deal. And the price is obviously skyrocketed and jacked
up. Of course, just because of the scandal.
Just because of the scandal, but
damn.
Yeah, I know. Like I agree with what you're saying, man. Like it's just so hard. Like, as a music producer like yourself, it's just
so tough. Like, it's like that bass line has been in like 5 million songs.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. What's one of the craziest stories you have with dealing with like the legalities and stuff?
Every single one. Let's see here. I don't know. There's been a lot. With Vice, especially. I don't know. There was one particular sync, it's not so much of a crazy story, more than kind of like a check, like up like a bucket list kind of thing for me, where we were looking to use a song by John Martin for a documentary called Rat Park. It was John Martin's Cocaine was the title of the recording, and I was just kind of researching and trying to figure out like who controlled that recording. And it turned out it was like Island Records, which is, where Bob Marley's recordings sit, where like, so many, prolific reggae artists' recordings sit on this label, and just somehow this John Martin kind of like old rock song was within this repertoire of music. So I hit them up, and just Chris Martin is the guy that owns it, and it was just really cool and special, just trying to firstly clear it for nothing, because he came to me with a really expensive price, and I was like, I can't do that. I got Vice money right now.
help me out.
Help me out, which he ended up helping out. But anyways, it was this really cool relationship that we had started, and he started sending me vinyls and recordings and stuff like to the office, and my dad is like a huge Burning Spear fan, which is one of the best reggae groups that I think to this date, and they reside with Island Records as well too. So it was just kind of a feel good kind of cool thing, just to find where this rare recording sat within this whole reggae
how
giant.
did it get there?
How did it get there, right? So it was just kind of crazy for me to map that out and figure that out, and it was just like, I was like, this music industry stuff is really super cool at that point. I was like, this is awesome. Like, you would never think. That's probably one of the craziest stories, I think. But
I love to see you talk about this stuff too, because I can just see, I can see that you love it.
It's excitement, So like, and that's what I look for too. Like, I have a great team right now, like Kyla, Chris, Martine, and Zoe, and that's what I found in them when they all approached me about this stuff. They all had the same passion, and like, now that we've got this team now, like, it's just like I'm so blessed to have this crew around me, and we're just really looking forward to seeing what comes next, and things are happening, man. Like,
What are you working on currently?
So right now, which I was just telling you before we got here, so we're finalizing. So Eli Roth. Like Inglorious Bastards, Hostel. He's doing his new upcoming slasher film, Thanksgiving, and we're finalizing the music for that, which is absolutely bonkers.
Badass.
It's just working with Eli. He's such a great music mind as well too. It's just like it's really super cool. But we're looking to close that up, and then we're working on like I won't drop it yet, but like a really big drummer, and he is doing a documentary on one of the most prolific hip-hop producers ever.
Wow.
You can figure that out if anybody's listening to this. If you can't connect the dots, big drummer, biggest, most prolific hip-hop producer ever. We're doing a documentary on him, and we're music supervising that. And then, man, we got a couple of Amazon shows kick in.
Nice.
A lot of, we still do a lot of independent films. We never turn down like the independent director. We love working on those films. So it's things like that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
When you do the independent director stuff, do you guys like have one steady rate, or do you kind of like have it vary depending on like who?
We try our best to work within your budget.
Yes, cool.
But
like kind of to an extent, obviously, like you're not trying to be at a net loss, but no, that's cool.
So we try our best to do that, but for the most part, like when you're dealing with like episodic series on like like a huge streamer, there is like this particular rate that we charge, and,
just because that's so much work.
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
But we do favors for like local directors and producers. That's for me, especially starting from how I got into the business, it's just important for me to like keep that door open, because I'm for independent always. I'm for independent. I'm for unsigned. Heyman was a big proponent of that as well too, and I kind of took that from him. And it's always good to keep that door open, and also just to other music supervisors as well too. Like sometimes you work on this film that is independent, and then it really catches fire, and all of a sudden it becomes this like huge movie that everybody.
Right. Everything's an opportunity.
Everything's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
You never know, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so that as well too. You know, try to
Cool.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's important. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's
Yeah.
awesome to see. What do you think are some common misconceptions in sync?
That's a great question. I think one of the most common misconceptions in it is that, you know, there is no set rate really for a particular sync. You know, like, you know, just because of the popularity of a song, it doesn't always necessarily dictate that it should be in this price bracket or not. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times it's really just how a song is exploited in the film, whereas, you know, maybe it's at the top, maybe it's the theme for a trailer, maybe it's the end title sequence in the credits, which is more expensive. That's really how music is kind of priced out a little bit, where everybody thinks like, okay, well, just because it's like, you know, again, I'm just using Beatles because they're the biggest. Just because it's a Beatles song is going to cost you so much money. It's just it's really how the song is being exploited within a film or a TV series. Yes, Beatles will be more expensive than other tracks, but it depends on where it is in particular segments of a TV series or a film, right? So you could, yeah. So even, you know, if you're an independent artist and, you know, you got reached out by, like, I don't know, by, let's say, the music supervisor for the next upcoming Spider-Man movie, if your song is the theme song for the new upcoming Spider-Man, no matter who you are or how many followers you have, you know, it's a way your track is exploited that should really determine how many, you know, fees you get, not based on, you know, who you are as a musician. And I try to tell that to a lot of independent artists all the time, just to watch what deals they're signing and how much they're getting paid based on a sync, you know. It's not so much your popularity, it's the way your track is being exploited.
Yes.
And,
it's more about like the opportunity you're getting, that rather than like, oh, I build up my brand presence to like 1 million followers.
Right.
I have this many Spotify followers.
So Spider-Man wants to rely on you for the theme song of that new Spider-Man film that's coming up. That's very important to them.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So you should price it as such, no matter
Right.
how many followers you have or not.
Yes.
They're in love with your song.
Right.
Make them pay for it.
True. Yeah. Know your worth.
Know your worth.
Yeah. And one thing we were talking about on our last call was that, like, you were talking about the difference between like working for commercial stuff and then TV stuff, and just how commercials like kind of draining. It's just a whole different.
Yeah. The Apple experience was like, man. Like,
It's so cool to be able to say that, though.
yeah, I mean, it was great, but like, you know, you think you're hot shit going into something.
You don't know jack shit, actually.
I was like, whoa.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. I mean,
Yeah.
and like the guys on the like Apple Music team, they're their music minds are just
Like beasts.
beasts.
Damn.
And I always thought that I like to think now that after the fact, after I went through that,
It's a wake-up call. You're like, I need to level up.
I need to level up, because like, I mean, like working with like Jonathan and Charlotte and everybody, like they're just so like on
Dialed in.
point of music, and just like the breakdown of like how they break down music and the intricacies behind it and what it means and how it would hit a viewer's ears and what that does for them and the emotions that it was. I was just like, are
It's
you
an
kidding?
art, like, truly.
I was like, I would just pick a song and I thought it sounded good. Like, no. It's not the case over there.
It's technical.
It's technical. Everything matters. Every second of every detail of every crescendo of riser transition in that music matters.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy stuff. And I just such a pleasure just having the opportunity to see within that Apple lens.
Yes.
It totally changed my whole way of music supervising to this day now.
Right.
Now I'm dialed in.
Right.
I wasn't dialed in to that level
level.
before. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, meetings on meetings on meetings on a snare. Meetings on meetings on meetings on a drum kick. Just like what is going on? It's cool stuff. But so the commercial versus at that rate of ads coming out, it can be draining, because you always have to be on your toes, and you always have to have your ears to the street as to what is resonating with people and what gets people going, right? And I do love that side of it even more now. But yeah, again, I think, TV and film, you have a lot more time. You know, you're working on a film. It could take
months or years,
9 months to years.
Yeah.
If the director doesn't have his shit together.
Yeah.
But commercials are like.
Yeah, like weeks. It's insane.
Products coming out on this date. We need the commercial on this date.
Yes.
No choice, right? So.
When you were working with Apple, was it a lot of like custom work, or were you going out and finding stuff and then turning it into more like Apple-centric sounding stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, like I said, you constantly have your ear to the street because you're constantly looking for music, so you're building a library all the time. But, they also did some custom original stuff as well, too, at their keynotes and things like that. And they would commission, composers to do that. And also for, like, Apple films and things like that, they do the original score. But then, a lot of it was, like, like cut downs and edits of songs that we pitched because it still has to fit within 30 seconds, and there's all kinds of soundscapes that and intros to the commercial that you have to take elements of the song and provide that. So there was this very much so this custom element, but also the straight up pitching music element as well too. So it was combined into both. Yeah.
Interesting.
I never cut so much music in my life. Like just trying to seriously, I was like, I had to brush up my skills and. They were like, okay, cool, give us a cut down in 30 seconds of this song. And I was like, okay, cool. And they want so much in it.
Yes.
Where you just find yourself just trying to figure out what you can take out of that song in 30 seconds and make it impactful.
Yeah. At Racket, when you're pitching music and they ask for cut downs if you're doing commercial work, are you and your team cutting that down yourself, or are you going and asking that artist to be like, can you go and cut this down for us?
We would cut it down ourselves.
Oh, wow.
If we need something that's more custom or, then we would approach you and be like, hey, can you turn this around, or maybe, I don't know, drop the piano in it or drop the drum, things like that we would ask you for. But as far as the cut downs, that's our job to do. And Martine is the cut down master at it.
Shout out.
Martine. I don't touch that anymore.
Good riddance.
Yeah. Just let me pick the song. You guys can
let me do the fun stuff.
Yeah, right? Shit.
Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up the podcast?
Oh, no, man. I mean, just if there's anybody here that, I like to speak for the musician. Like, it's a very daunting process to submit your music to a music supervisor. And what I always say is keep on doing it and keep on pushing it. Even though it's a daunting process, we are listening to your music. It does come in. Sometimes we may not reply to you, but always be ready and always be available because, we might not reply, but we're registering that in our music library. And when we get that brief that calls for, I don't know, like say you're a didgeridoo. What's that thing called? A didgeridoo? The Australian diddle.
Oh, I think didgeridoo.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes,
okay, cool.
Yes.
So if you're that kind of musician, and I come
I have
across
a project for you.
There you go. Just be ready when I call you because it's quick and efficient. And that's one thing that happens in this industry. It's just like the musician or artist, they get kind of like put back because they're not getting any response or anything like that, and they kind of just forget about it. But that opportunity can come knocking on the door. So just always be ready and just trust that your music is being listened to by music supervisors when you push it out. And
I'm sure what helps with that is what we talked about before, where it's just like niche down into like maybe 2 or 3 of your best, or even 1 or 2 of your best genres, and then be known for that by that music supervisor.
Exactly.
But yeah, cool. Thanks so much for coming on. You're so awesome to talk to. It feels like we're just like chilling, which is so nice.
I didn't even notice there's a microphone in front of me.
But yeah, guys, don't forget to subscribe, follow Everton on socials. Do you want to shout out your socials?
Yeah, you can reach me at IG. So it's EH_side SIDE_EV. And you can reach me out there. And then also I'll throw everybody a bone as well too. If you're looking to submit music, you can submit it to our submission portal that goes across all the Racket music supervisors on the team. And that is submit music, all one word, at racketmusic.com. So it's WRACKET music.com. And feel free to send your music and we'll see if we can make it work. And don't follow up every day.
Do not email every single day.
Yeah.
And you can check out sellingthesoundtrack.com for the email newsletter where we go over summaries of the interviews, case studies, and just new music sync news. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Cool, bye. Peace.